Alright people, Catfish Dave here. It's Thursday night. Now last video was called Double Tactics. I kind of set up in a spot I thought I could get a good blue or a good flathead and fish for both. Tonight, I'm not going to roll a blue cat out, but this is primarily a flathead trip. I'm in a lot shallower water. There's no 20-25 foot water around me. If I do throw a cut bait out, it's going to be about 8 or 9 foot deep. Now, channel's way out there. You can't see it. I'm up against a kind of a bluff here, and roughly anywhere from 7 to 9 foot of water. Looks real nasty. A lot of big rocks, a lot of timber. And like I say, it's springtime, and I got one small flathead last video, and this video I'm going to try to better that. I've got some good sized live gizzard shad, and I've got some bluegill. My main concentration will be my float rigs, and I'm going to throw some cut bait out because I'm here, and who knows, a flathead might hit them even though it's 4-day-old skipjack. Like last time, these gizzard shad, these big shad, they're a little too lively. They'll take and just swim a big circle and kind of swim a big knot up in your float line. So I'm going to trim the tail off them. They'll still move good, but they won't have that much power. The thing that makes a gizzard shad such a great bait, as opposed to other baits like bluegills and stuff, is the gizzard shad never stops moving, ever. It can't. This will be my gizzard shad rig with the biggest float. Now I had something hit this last trip, and I'm pretty sure it was an old gar. This is the smaller of the two shad I got. I'm going to trim the tail off. Let me do this over the side of the boat. And I'm going to hook him just a little bit behind the dorsal fin, so he tends to swim out. If I hook him more towards the head, he'll kind of swim more of a circle on this float. It's not like I'm free lining him in heavy current. That's what we got right there. Put a bluegill on this one. I'm going to start out with a small bluegill because that's a big bait on that one. It's a little early in spring. It's mid-March. This bluegill, I'm going to leave the tail on him because they just don't hardly get lively enough for me. It's a very small bluegill, so I'm going to have to be careful not to hook him too deep. Pretty good size hook. And I don't want to kill him. The biggest problem with running multiple float rigs off a boat is if those fish try to cross each other. I'll have to keep an eye on that. That's always a big hassle. Well, we're baited up. I will throw some cut skipjack on here and just chunk it out towards the channel. I don't expect blue cat to be hanging out in here, but it is getting into spring, so I can get some passerbyers, could even get a big passerbyer. And again, up this shallower section, I could even get a big flathead on the cut bait. We can't rule that out, not in this area. One of the areas I've always wanted to fish is a bank fisherman, but I couldn't get there from the bank. This skipjack is 4-day-old. It's starting to get a little soft. Not much current here, so my line should stay where I want them. The only thing that'll break me off anchor will be a big fish, and that's okay if that happens. This could be Snag City out here, I don't know. It looked a little rough on a depth finder. Faded up, man. Bluegill just took off. Bluegill, yeah, bluegill just took off. It's obviously a small fish because he ain't holding that float under. Let's see what we got here. Oh, he come off. You gotta be kidding me. I believe we got some gar running around out there. That's 2 bluegills gone. He pulled that float under twice. He was big enough to do that. He should have been big enough to hook if he was a catfish. Try her again. Attempt number 3 with the bluegill. Them old gar harass you to death, bottom or top, it don't matter. I know I am in Flathead country. I can just smell them. I believe that gizzard shad just got hit. I heard a pretty good noise, pretty good splash. Yep, I believe something's on that. Maybe this fish will be big enough. I can't tell if the float's under or not, but there's definitely something on it. Let's see if we got us a flathead here. Definitely not a bad fish. He ain't no giant, but he's got that float under it. It's a big float too. I don't want him getting in my anchor rope. And he's definitely bigger than the first one I got last video. I won't get the net. Mission accomplished. Not a bad fish. Oh yeah. Definitely bigger than the first one we got last video. Hit a big old gizzard shad. Woo! He's ready to go. We've been out here about an hour and a half for that fish. Bluegill's been hit a couple times by what I suspect is a gar. Alright people, it is a weeknight, so I'm gonna head in early. Basically, I like float fishing for flatheads in the spring just because it's different, you know. It's just, I can all year round go out there and throw cut baits out and catch mostly blues, and every once in a while you luck up on a flathead, but once in a while I like to just target them. It's something different. You know, it's a break from the norm, I guess. And springtime, when that water starts heating up from winter, seems to be a really good time to do it. I already know I'm going to get big blues in the fall, so this is just something I took up doing the last couple of years, last several years, just to change things up. Did end up with a flathead tonight, bigger than the last one, so I'm happy with that. As far as the cut baits, I didn't expect nothing here. You know, I knew I could get lucky, but I really wasn't expecting nothing. I threw them out anyway. But my main target was a flathead on a float. We did get one, biggest one in the boat so far. Basically, what I'm using here is this float is big enough that when that fish tries to take it down with this circle hook, the buoyancy of the float sets the hook on the fish. When I seen that line going out, I wasn't overly excited because I already knew the hook was set as long as he was big enough to get it all in his mouth. And basically what I do is I like using open faces because I'm pitching live baits and there's less resistance. And seems like it's a little easier to not throw the bait off the hook when you're hooking a live bait. You can't hook a live bait deep, you kill it. Basically I'm running braided line on these, and my leader is about 1 foot long, okay? So this one is set for about 6 feet deep. Well, if my leader is already 1 foot long, then what I do is I'll get about 5 feet of, I'm using 80-pound mono, and I'm attaching that to the braid with what I call a double Albright. There's different names for it. And what that does is that knot is bigger than my 80-pound mono. So then what I do is I get a small bead that's just big enough to barely fit over that 80-pound mono, and that knot is my stop. I've got this one set about 6 feet deep. I got that one set about 8 feet deep. I'm over anywhere between 7 and 9 foot of water here. Basically my baits are off the bottom 1 foot or so. As far as the floats I'm using, they don't make these anymore. You can make your own. I've got a video, old video called Catfish Dave Slip Float from Hell. And what I done was I took some pool noodle and I took one of those cigar floats and I basically took some adhesive and glued that thing inside the pool noodle. And I caught a couple flatheads on it that night, I think. But you can make them yourself. It's fun to do. Sit around, watch them floats move around. It's just something different. It's still a little early for what I'm doing right now, mid-March. As we start getting some 70s and maybe a few 80-degree days here, this live bait bite will pick up pretty good. Start seeing more than one fish a night, as long as you're over the right area anyhow. As far as being in the right area, hey, I've never fished here in my life. I simply got in this boat, took out off the boat ramp, went about 1/4 mile, and said this looks like flathead country, so I set up shop. You know, I'm eventually going to find spots the more I do this. So far the boat is all new and the places I go is all new. As far as live baits, I like the gizzard shad because it is a constantly moving fish. It has to stay on the move. If you look at shad in a tank, they never stop moving. If you look at a bluegill, he might just be sitting still. Shad's always on the move. My bluegill, it kind of sat in one area. It might move 5 foot this way, 6 foot that way. But I've watched that gizzard shad. He'll be way over here and he'll go 30, 40 feet one direction. And a lot of times they'll swim right over the top of a flathead doing that. I think the extra movement helps to basically send a signal out to the flatheads that there is a fish around in distress or whatever. Basically like a dinner bell. Anyhow, I'm gonna pull in. Went after a flathead, got a flathead. I'll take it. This is a video. There was fish in the video, or at least one. That makes it a fishing video. This is Catfish Stay with another one, signing out. That's what we got right there. Definitely not a bad fish. Hit a big old gizzard shad. Ready to go.